Well, this is my back porch, and so I thought what I would do is I would come out here and maybe put together some meditations that might encourage you as you go through your week. Sometimes I think a lot of folks find that just a Sunday morning getting of the Word isn't enough for them, and so I want to provide you that opportunity to maybe hear just a spot through the week. If it, depending on how this goes, maybe I can do this a little bit more often than once a week. But what I want to do is I want to do a little series in Malachi. I love Malachi. He's a great Old Testament prophet, and he's got some really great thoughts inside there. And so I'd just like to share with you some thoughts as I read through Malachi, things that occur to me, simple things that actually probably anybody could just go and pull with a little time and effort, pull out some books and some commentaries and things like that. So these aren't really hard, really deep thoughts, but the challenge is in the application, isn't it? Because that's where the rubber meets the road, and you can build a great car, but if it doesn't drive well on the road, you got a problem, right? And I think that's what I want to try and really do with this little Devo series, is make sure that Christianity is something that's driving well on your road. So let's begin with the word itself and Malachi, and we're just going to actually just begin with the first few verses. An oracle, the word of the Lord to Israel through Malachi. I have loved you, says the Lord, but you ask, how have you loved us? All right, so you heard those first few verses read, and you might be sitting there going, Malachi who? And that's the natural reaction. Malachi is a name that you do hear occasionally in our culture, but you didn't necessarily hear it a lot in Hebrew culture. There's a joke that says, by the way, that Malachi was the first Italian prophet, and then you say the name wrong. You say it Malachi, right? Sounds like Italian, I guess, at least to some people's ears. It's just kind of a fun thing. But you might be sitting there thinking, who is this Malachi guy? What do we know about him? That this book was written, and in fact, actually, many people, Bible scholars, translate this, say it's actually not a name, but it's actually my messenger. That's what Malachi means. A Malach is a messenger, and so Malachi is my messenger inside the Hebrew language. Who was this Malachi guy? We know a few things about him. We know he was writing after the exile, so no earlier than 518 BC, which is when the exiles came back and were rebuilding the temple. No later than probably 400. Most of the Bible scholars I read say that he was writing somewhere around 440 BC, and they considered him the last of the biblical writings, the last of the prophets. He never identifies himself by name. Just simply says my messenger, or if that in fact as his name is actually Malachi, but he's largely anonymous otherwise, unless of course we take the word of ancient Jewish tradition, which suggests that it's actually Ezra. And so Ezra sat down, and we know that part of the thing that's going on inside this book involving covenant faithfulness was something that was very much on his heart. And so he wanted to speak into this cultural situation. God gave him a word, and he spoke into this cultural situation. If you read Ezra, the book of Ezra, you're going to see in there that Ezra is dealing in a very difficult cultural situation to try and bring some covenant faithfulness back to the people. So the situation really fits with the time of Ezra, and certainly fits his character, very much so. He's one of the more important members of what we would call the minor prophets, by the way. So it certainly is worth our time to take a look at him, because he's heavily quoted in the New Testament. John the Baptist's ministry is predicted by Malachi, as well as Jesus. Jesus is right in there. There's a messianic prophecy inside the book. And a number of New Testament writers, including Paul, quotes Malachi extensively. So he's a very important one of the so-called minor prophets. Definitely not minor in importance, by the way, but just, there's other reasons why people proposed, and Malachi certainly is one of the more important. He's one of the major minor prophets, I guess you could say. So the message here, though, I guess the first thing that we can take away from right here is the fact that the message is more important than the person. If the person was the most important thing, we'd have an extensive bio, we'd have a story, we'd have, character development, all those kinds of things. But here it's very much the case that the message is much more important than the person. You see, the message that God sends is not authenticated by the person who sends it. And that's a very important thing that we have to remember, because truth is the truth wherever it comes from, whoever it comes from. And people will tell you at times that you have no right to say because they know your history. And there's going to be people who know about that. There's a pastor in the next town over from me here who is one of the finest pastors I've ever known. His name is John Walworth. In fact, I've called him the pastor of Shiawassee County. There's still people here in this town who remember him when he was a rascal, way back in the day. I only think of him as this really incredible saint who's a wise man, very wise, very deep. But you have some of these folks who won't listen to John because they know what he was like back when he was a teenager and a young man. So there, you have to remember, though, the truth is the truth. It doesn't matter the channel that it's on, right? They know your past, but whom God calls, God qualifies. All right, so if God's called you, you're qualified. If you're trying to tell somebody on their deathbed, hey, guess what? Jesus is waiting for you if you'll trust him. And that person says, well, guess what? I know about your history and you lived just as crazy as I did. Don't be discouraged, because the truth is still the truth. It doesn't matter the message the medium that it comes through. We are all called to carry God's message to other people. Something to think about here with all this is it's the devil's job. That's what the devil does. Devil comes from the word diabolos. It means slanderer. And so that's the devil's job. And also Satan means adversary. It's the idea of a prosecuting attorney. And that's his job and his minion's job to slander you. And so when someone says to you, you shouldn't be talking to me about this stuff because I know da-da-da about your history. Well, I got a fly buzzing around my face. That's the perils of doing ministry in the outdoors, right? But it doesn't matter, because the truth is still the truth. It doesn't matter, and the message is more important than the person. That's not to say individuals aren't important, but only that if the message is from God, then the medium is less important than what God has to say to that person that you're speaking to. Don't let anybody, I think that's the biggest takeaway that we can have as we begin to start delving into Malachi, is that don't let anybody disqualify you from because of your past. Don't let anybody tell you you can't speak. Don't anybody tell you you don't have the right to say anything to me at all. The truth is the truth. It doesn't matter the channel. Go say what God's got. Go say what God has laid on your heart to that person who needs to hear about Jesus. All right? So that's the devotional moment for this time, whether it's this week or this day, or however often we're going to end up doing this. But I hope it's a blessing to you, that you are important in the fact that you are a bearer of Christ, and that you have a very important message and a ministry and a role to the people who are around you. Don't be discouraged. Don't let the devil, don't let your enemies, the people who hate you, not that you hate them, don't let them disqualify you or discourage you, because you are qualified. Whom God calls, God qualifies. God bless you. We'll see you again soon.